I'm Michael Orwig, and welcome once again to the Wizard's Chest. With me today is Anna Kujawa. Anna has been a longtime friend of my wife's. I met you through a Lynn. We passed a little bit, but Anna is a healer and uses a lot of different modalities. Holistic psychotherapy, you're working with both adults and children, but you do play therapy with the kids.
Yes.
And you've been a long time Course in Miracles instructor.
Yes.
For those of you that have never heard of A Course of Miracles, that would be kind of rare for someone that's been somewhat awakened, because it's been around for nearly 50 years now.
Yes.
But I was thinking it started in the 80s, and you were telling me the actual channeling came in the late 60s.
Late 60s.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so A Course in Miracles is a self-study curriculum, and it's a brilliant, beautiful combination of psychotherapy and spirituality, and the purpose of the curriculum is for healing, self-healing, and it's a channeled material. It's a channeled curriculum is what it is, not a religion. It's a curriculum. And it came through a self-professed militant atheist, Helen Schuckman, who is a psychologist at Columbia University in New York City. I think the channeling started around 1967. And one day Helen heard a voice that says, "This is A Course in Miracles, please take notes." And of course she thought she was going crazy. She didn't believe in anything like that. And if it hadn't been for her colleague Bill Thetford, who said, "Oh, well, just write it down, and if it's crazy, I'll tell you, and you can stop." If it hadn't been for her colleague Bill Thetford saying he would help her to see if it was crazy, then she might not have followed the instructions and took notes.
And within that, all of us at different times have kind of voiced the why me.
Yes.
And what happened when she did that.
And when she said, "Why me?" the voice said, "'Cause I knew you'd do it."
Yeah.
To which I'm sure she went. You mean it's not because I'm special? You just, you knew I would do it. So for all of you out there,
working with spirit information is fascinating, because the different ascended masters, the different higher frequency beings have access, and we do too, if we opened ourselves up to it.
Exactly.
But they're working with understandings about everything about us, and as our mass consciousness grows as it is right now rapidly, we'll be tapping into those layers more and more and more.
Absolutely.
But for someone like this, that's the entity that's bringing the information in, and they said, "Well, we know we'd do it." Well, they really can see that.
They know that, and she did. And for many of us who want to receive things like that, but are telling ourselves, "Well, I'm not high enough, or I'm not educated enough, or I'm not spiritual enough," that's really not the case. It's really, are you willing to do it? Are you open? Are you willing? So that's what it really comes down to. So that's what I love about that particular story about Helen Schuckman.
And there's
It's not because she had a high spiritual attunement.
No.
It was because she was willing.
But also she would be a very good example. In other words, she wasn't someone that's been meditating in a monastery up in the Himalayas and all of that. Here she was a self-professed
Militant,
the whole bit. And
yeah,
it's crazy. But when we come across information like this, it's hard to ignore.
Yes.
And this channeling went on for 7 years?
7 years.
So it was a huge volume of information.
Yes.
Now, off camera, we talked about the main things certainly around the healing of self-love, healing of fear.
Right.
Two huge things that hold people back.
Right.
And Course in Miracles have been being taught now for nearly 50 years, and we have Marianne Williamson's running for president.
Course in Miracles teacher.
One of the best known international teachers. But how long have you been teaching it?
Well, I started teaching it in 1988 or 89. I started teaching it when I was 19. I started studying it when I was 17. And by 19, I was teaching it. So I've been teaching, and I'm now 51. So I've been teaching it a long time.
And we love to use the words, if you really want to learn something well, teach it.
And that's a premise of A Course in Miracles, is that if you want to be healed, then learn how to heal. If you want to learn something, then teach it. Because the premise of A Course in Miracles is that all that you give is given to yourself. So that giving is the way to have. And that's a premise of A Course in Miracles.
With any piece of understanding, we normally take it in at a mental level initially. This is to be lived.
Indeed.
How long do you think it took you to move to that state where you were basically a walking living of the understandings, not just
right
doing it from the mental side?
Right. Well, that is in progress. That is in progress. And what captured me and compelled me about A Course in Miracles, that made me go, I'm going to devote my life to teaching this material, was that as soon as I started using the material, the Course in Miracles is nothing but a big instruction manual on how to experience miracles as natural, how to transform situations that are painful, lacking, sick, into situations that are abundant and healthy and happy. And as soon as I started doing what A Course in Miracles taught, like practicing it, I would get profound results like that. And when I was 19 and I had been studying it for a couple of years, I went through a devastating breakup, relationship breakup, and very deeply depressed. But I continued to do what A Course in Miracles was saying to do in terms of how to interpret what I was going through, how to interpret what I was going through forgiveness and release from guilt and love. And I experienced such a transformation that I thought to myself, if A Course in Miracles can do that, if A Course in Miracles can pull me from down there and bring me to up here, it can do anything. And I'm going to dedicate my life to teaching it and to learning it.
Were there any specifics from that scenario that you remember that were really helpful for you?
Oh my goodness.
Within the story?
Yeah.
The short part.
Yeah. Let's see.
Do you remember any of
Yes,
this?
I will. A Course in Miracles teaches us that our worth is established by God, by our source, okay? That our worth is not established by anything we do or how other people perceive us, whether we're rejected or accepted, however, that our worth is internal and our worth is built in. And as I applied that understanding to my situation, it healed me. It released me from that perception that I had been rejected because of a lack of worth. And my suffering at that time was coming from that perception, that interpretation. And I realized, A Course in Miracles helped me to see that my suffering was coming from a false interpretation. It wasn't coming from reality. It was coming because I was interpreting it wrongly. I was interpreting, they rejected me. That means there's something wrong with me. That means I'm unlovable. That means I'm not good enough. And A Course in Miracles said, no, actually, that's not the case. You're just misinterpreting it. The truth is that your value is inherent in who and what you are. And so I realized, all suffering comes down to a false or misinterpretation of the facts. And what are the facts? You are love. That's the fact. According to A Course in Miracles, the fact is you are love, you are only love, you've only been love, you only will be love. That's the fact. Everything else besides that is just a misinterpretation that you learned from the past, from people who didn't know either.
We've been conditioned in so many ways through society to see ourselves as unworthy.
Yes.
And just across the board. You can certainly look at the guilt trip the Catholic religion does.
Yeah. Or most religions.
Everything becomes a sin.
Yes.
You can look at how the education system is structured.
Mm-hmm.
I look at genius as only being represented by maybe 2% of the human genius represented by academia.
Right.
Okay, 98% of our genius is expressed in the myriad of the human experience.
Yes.
So within that, if I don't do well in school, what's being programmed?
Right.
Am I not worthy? No, you have no worth.
Right.
This we have determined on a society level, governmental level, that what I'm teaching you has worth. Therefore, if you're not good at this, if your genius lies elsewhere,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
the energy of worthiness and victimhood
Yes.
are two of the longest running archetypes
Absolutely.
within our psyche. And worthiness and self-love certainly are tied together.
Absolutely.
But victimhood and I am a creator being
Absolutely.
are kind of, I tie those two together. The worthiness, self-love part, I kind of tie that together. If you if you live and teach from that living that I'm a creator being,
Yes.
I can't go into victimhood.
Right. Exactly.
Now, there may be that of, this isn't a particularly fun experience I'm having. Why did I create it? What is there for me? But the same thing can be looked at with the worthiness side of, there's aspects of self-love that are tied in with that. And then you have the big aspect that you mentioned, and that's fear.
Yes.
How does Course in Miracles bring the fear piece in?
Yeah.
What do they do with that?
Well, A Course in Miracles says something very radical, and the Course in Miracles is very radical. But it says that we only have two emotions, and then all the other emotions come from those two emotions. And those two emotions are love and fear. And one of those emotions, fear, we made, and the other emotion, love, is who we are. It's what reality is. It's who we are, it's what reality is. And that everything comes from one of those two emotions. And it says that fear is just the absence of love, or the denial of love. And that fear is like the hand that's holding the bouquet of all the other symptoms of fear. Sickness, poverty, separation, anger, etc., etc. And so A Course in Miracles has the purpose of helping us to undo fear, to look at the fear, to question the fear, and to see that the fear isn't real, meaning not true. It's not the facts. Okay? So A Course in Miracles is saying the facts of the matter and the facts of the universe and the fact of us is love. The fact of source is love. The fact of the universe, that's love. And that the denial of the nature of the universe and our nature is where fear comes from. And so the undoing of fear is just the acceptance of what's so, the acceptance of who we really are. And that's the undoing of fear. But that all healing comes down to the undoing of fear. That's what A Course in Miracles says.
And the more that we can chip away at that fear, the more we're simply reawakening our authentic self.
Exactly. You're just becoming your natural self.
Yeah.
And the Course in Miracles says that its purpose is not that you would seek for love and seek for love and seek for what you are, but that you would seek for and uncover all the blocks to the love that is your natural state. And that's the purpose of A Course in Miracles. Not to become something that you're not right now, but just to uncover or to undo all that has been covering up your real self, your real, essential, brilliant, loving, eternal self. So it's just like a undoing process.
Is there a short version of the Course in Miracles? Or
yes, there's lots of books out there. I know there's a book called Course in Miracles for Dummies.
Is there really?
Yes, there really is.
And you've written a book.
And I've written a book. Yes.
What was? Tell us a little bit about that.
The title of that book is New World Anthems. New World Anthems and New Earth Prayers.
Okay.
New World Anthems and New Earth Prayers. And so one of the ways that I've integrated the ideas of A Course in Miracles is through poetry and through prayers. And so that's what this book is. It's poems and prayers where I'm taking the ideas of A Course in Miracles and using them in whatever I have going on. And then that was it would come out in the form of a prayer or a poem as me integrating, meaning me using those ideas. And so it's written as a prayer book. And then I've categorized, the table of contents is categories of prayers. So there's like prayers for family, prayers for health, prayers for abundance, prayers for artists, prayers for healing, things like that. And so they have those categories, so you can look at the table of contents and go, yeah, I could use some prayers relative to health today, or I could use some prayers today for around financial abundance today, or I could use some prayers relative to like with my children. And then you go to that category, and then there's prayers there that you can say that for me are like the condensed version of A Course in Miracles. So if you were to use those poems and prayers for a new interpretation or healing of whatever you've got going on, it's like you're using A Course in Miracles. So that's what that is.
You mentioned you have some children. How?
I have a child.
A child?
Yes.
And how old?
She is 15.
Okay, good luck with that.
Yes, I welcome all prayers at this time.
I wanted to get into the kids because...
oh my goodness, yes.
You do play therapy.
Yes, I'm a registered play therapist.
And I had never studied play therapy.
Mm-hmm.
It's... off camera, you mentioned play therapy actually goes all the way back to Carl Jung.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a play therapist is a therapist who works specifically with children. And play therapy is doing therapy with children in their own language. So you don't want to do play therapy with a kid where you go, so tell me, how do you feel about, your situation, your problem? Children, their cognitive abilities are not that developed.
And we're talking about children that might be as young as 3.
Exactly.
Up to,
yeah.
Well, you can go many ages.
You can go, with play therapy, you can go all through adulthood. But play therapy is starting at 3 and going till 13 or so. And so, children, their cognitive abilities are not developed. And so children are still speaking the language of symbols. That's their language that they speak. And so play therapy is where you communicate with children in the language they speak, which is symbology. So in a play therapy session, the child comes into the playroom and in the playroom there are all manner of toys or a sandbox that can be where the child can project their unconscious material or their psychic conflict onto. So all kinds of toys that are good for projection, like sand, like art supplies, like puppets, things like that. And I specialized in sand tray therapy. So I would have a big sandbox and then thousands and thousands of figures that a child can make worlds with. Trees and rocks and houses and people and wizards and dragons and dinosaurs and all kinds of things. So the child would come in and I say to the child, so first of all, so the idea is of play therapy that if a child comes into an environment where they have unconditional positive acceptance and they are allowed to lead the play, that their unconscious mind will naturally have them gravitate toward whatever toys or materials will best allow their unconscious mind to project out.
And it's very important. You made it. I want to just re-emphasize the point. The therapist isn't leading in any way. Whereas if I was to get down on the floor with one of my grandkids, frequently the adult is trying to get the grandchild to engage.
Correct.
Whereas in this one, it's more you're the subordinate.
I'm the follower.
Partner. Yeah.
They're the guide.
And you've got to run it like that.
Exactly. And so let's say we're talking about let's say the child gravitates to the sand tray. And then I go, well, awesome, would you be willing to make a world in there? Anything could be happening in the world, anything could be in the world, anything could be happening. It's your world. And so the kid then will create a world in there. And I have seen some of the most incredible creations, worlds. And then I say, oh, well, tell me about this world. What's happening? And then they tell me what's happening in the world. And invariably, what's happening in that world is what's going on within them. Now, I only ask them questions about the figures in their world. How does that figure feel about having been buried like that? How do they feel about having been buried like that? Oh, they don't like it. Somebody buried them. Oh my. And so, are they wanting to stay buried, or do they wish someone would come unbury them? Well, they wish someone would unbury them. Oh, like who? And so now the kid goes and finds another figure. This character, And so as the child recreates their psychic conflict, whatever that is, as they play it out in the sand tray or the puppets or the art or whatever, what children automatically, unconsciously do is they will change the ending of the story such that they receive what they didn't get emotionally or psychologically. So they'll change the ending of the story where they get the help they need, or they get the understanding that they needed, or whatever it was. As a child plays out the unmet need in such a way that they get their needs met, and they did it themselves, healing naturally occurs in their psyche. And you didn't do anything, but just be an observer, ask some good questions, and and gave them unconditional acceptance for whatever they were expressing.
Perfect.
So that's how healing happens with children in play therapy.
Now, especially when it works very well, especially if there's any kind of a trauma or abuse.
Yes.
Obviously shows up.
Yes,
but play therapy can be used for ADHD, all of that.
Absolutely.
And that's a little bit more, in my opinion, intricate in that it's really bringing in the parents a lot more. And you were talking about the healing the guilt around
Yes,
that.
the
Most people
shame.
ordinarily wouldn't think that guilt or shame would be connected with it. But
Right.
talk about that a little bit.
Well, yeah. In the play therapy, let's say a kid comes in with, like you mentioned, ADHD. So where you wouldn't, you would think, well, how does a child heal? How's it? If a kid comes in with ADHD, how does play therapy help that kid? Okay.
You wouldn't ordinarily think
Exactly. You would think,
naturally.
it's better for trauma. It's more useful, but not the case, because kids who, for instance, come in with issues around ADD, you've got one problem called the ADD, and then you've got a whole host of complicating issues around it that tend to be sourced from shame. So they have one problem here, but it's covered up and made more complicated and obscure by the shame that comes unconsciously from the parents or the school or just our culture in general, if the child doesn't seem to fit in. So with the play therapy, then any shame that child has taken on around that gets to get played out, right? And as they get to play it out and reconfigure their conflict such that they are innocent, then the shame is able to be healed around it. And then the core problem, like say the ADD, comes clear, and ways of handling it become also clear, like, hey, how about we just do your schooling differently like this, or hey, how about we do some different parenting techniques like this. But usually the main problem around ADD comes in around the kid feels shame around being different, or the kid feels shame because the parents are frustrated and don't know how to handle it and unconsciously reinforce shame.
So you have to work with the parents as well.
And I always work with the parents. I typically say to my parents, I'll work with your kid if you will also work with me. Because, the parents truly are the first line here. And so I'll work with the parents, and then I work with the kid, and then I have the parents come into the playroom and I teach them how to do what I do for their own kids.
And you mentioned the huge benefit of just once a week, in essence, at your home, setting up a play therapy session scenario, and you can teach the parents how to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have the parents come in and I have them be the kid in the playroom, and I go, okay, now
you put them through their paces.
I sure
there
do. And then so I teach them how to follow their kid's lead, which most parents are like, oh, no. Most parents don't have good practice or experience letting the child lead the play, and asking the kids questions. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what that puppet's feeling right now. I wonder why he's feeling sad. So I teach the parents how to mirror just the kid's emotion. I see that this figure feels sad, or that figure feels angry. And I teach the parents how to mirror the emotion and how to let the child lead the play. Teaching the parents that if you'll just follow the lead and only ask questions and let them lead the play, your child will show it all to you. They'll show you what their fear is. They'll show you what their conflict is. They'll show you where their shame is. They'll show you what they need. But you have to be able and willing to follow, listen, and only ask questions. And that's a big challenge for...
It's not how society has conditioned parents.
At all. parents are like, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're going to do this and we're going to do that and we're on a schedule, so it's got to happen in this kind of time frame.
Oh, then you throw in the schedule and just go nuts with that.
So I tell parents, look, if even 1 hour a week, if you set up an environment and you say to your kid, what do you want to play with? You've set it up where there's puppets and a sandbox and art supply, and you're like, so what would you like to do? And the kid gets to lead the play, and all you do is follow and ask questions and be curious, then chances are very good your kid won't need to come in for therapy. Because the kid's basic essential needs are being met.
And the ADD can be tremendously lessened.
Absolutely.
Do you work with the diet at all?
Oh, yeah.
With parents and everything?
I call myself a holistic psychotherapist, which means I work with all my clients' body, mind, and spirit. And nutritional healing is one of my favorite, my own hobbies, my own favorite topics. So I'm always asking the parents about the kids' diet, just like I always ask my clients about their diet.
So feeding a child with ADD sugar doesn't seem to work very well?
At all. Yeah. And I always refer the parents of my kid clients to Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a psychiatrist who uses brain scans and nutritional therapy to treat children. So he takes brain scans of his kids, and he specializes in kids with ADHD. And so I go, please go read his material, Dr. Daniel Amen.
A-M-O-N?
A-M-E-N.
E-N.
And so I always have my parents go learn about nutritional supplementation and nutritional healing, because there's a lot of times when that ADD, ADHD really could be profoundly healed by nutritional healing. No sugar, things like no additives, coloring, food colorings, on and on.
The toxicities. The kids are extremely sensitive to the toxicities.
Yes.
And you cannot trust the Food and Drug Administration in any way, shape, or form. There are so many toxins they have allowed to come into the food supply.
Yes.
It's pretty much off the charts.
Absolutely. And they've done it intentionally. They're trying to hook children on their product.
And sugar will do that.
Absolutely.
So we have just a few minutes before we wrap up. How can people get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more, if they happen to be in the Denver area? And you live stream your Course in Miracles work, so they can certainly tap into that. How can people connect with your work?
Well, the main way is YouTube. So I have a YouTube channel, and my last name is spelled Kujawa, so it's Anna Kujawa. And on my YouTube channel, I've got all my Course in Miracles classes, and I've got meditations and readings and all kinds of stuff. So that's the best way to find my work.
And how do you advertise your live streams?
And my live streams, I advertise it right now on Facebook. So I live stream twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays, from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time currently. So it's Mountain Time. And currently I'm doing it on Facebook, but I'm moving over to YouTube. So YouTube and Facebook are where you can find my classes.
Okay. Your website?
AnnaKujawa.com.
That's simple enough.
Okay. Very simple.
And a phone number?
303-257-4264.
If anybody wants to get
If anybody. And the best way to reach me is to text me.
Text you.
I always tell people, text me.
So you're not as good email-wise?
Oh, I'm bad about email.
But text you with that phone number.
Exactly. Text me at that phone number. That's the best way to reach me.
Yes. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us.
This is so wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity to have this amazing dialogue.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Orwig. Anna Kujawa. This is the Wizard's Chest.